Werewolf girl keeps walking me home, even though I'm fine. Does anyone truly need a werewolf to walk them home from night classes? Alden certainly didn't think so. He was a music student, not a helpless lamb. But Briar, with her silver hair catching the lamplight and eyes that glowed like molten gold, insisted. Every single night. Her quiet persistence was both charming and deeply perplexing. He just wished she'd explain why his safety was suddenly her paramount concern on a perfectly safe campus, or why her gaze always darted to the deepest shadows. Alden gathered his sheet music, the final chords of his composition still echoing in his mind. The lecture hall emptied quickly around him, the usual post-class chatter fading as students hurried into the cool Ethel-guard night. He slung his worn satchel over his shoulder, the weight of his synth tablet a familiar comfort. Solara University, even after dark, felt safe enough. Lamplight pooled on the paved paths, casting long, friendly shadows that danced with the rustling leaves of the campus trees. He stepped out of the library building, pulling his jacket tighter against the evening chill. Briar was waiting. She stood by the ancient granite pillars, her silhouette framed by the glowing university crest above the archway. Her silver hair, a striking contrast against the deeper gray fur of her distinctive ears, shimmered under the nearest street lamp. Her intense yellow eyes, like molten gold, found his instantly across the receding crowd. She was lean, with an alert stillness that always made Alden feel slightly clumsy in comparison. He offered a polite, somewhat weary smile. "Evening, Briar. You don't have to wait, you know. I'm perfectly capable of walking myself." He gestured vaguely down the path towards the student dorms. She stepped forward, her movement fluid and silent. Her gaze flickered over his shoulder, then swept the empty plaza behind them before settling back on him. "It is late, Alden, and dark. I will walk with you." Her voice was soft, a low, melodic tone that held an undercurrent of unyielding resolve. "It's barely 10, he countered, trying to keep his tone light. "And the campus security patrols are constant. There's really no need." He tried this conversation countless times over the past few weeks. Every night the same gentle refusal, the same quiet insistence. It was a peculiar ritual. Briar merely tilted her head slightly, her gray ears swiveling almost imperceptibly as if picking up frequencies he could not detect. "The path to your dorms passes by the old science annex. It is better to have company." She offered no further explanation, as usual. Her conviction, however, was absolute. Alden sighed, a small puff of white vapor in the crisp air. Arguing was futile. It always was. He'd learned to accept her unusual escort, even if he didn't understand its necessity. "All right, Briar, lead the way then." He fell into step beside her, the familiar rhythm of their nightly walk beginning. His gaze, as it often did, drifted to her. Her silver hair fell in a cascade past her shoulders, catching the lamplight like spun moonlight. The fur on her ears was soft, almost iridescent. He wondered about her origins, her species. She was clearly not human, but the lycanthropes of Zalara were known for their reserved nature, their tendency to keep to themselves. Briar, despite her quiet demeanor, had attached herself to him with an almost fierce, if unspoken, protectiveness. He noticed the subtle tension in her shoulders, the way her head remained constantly alert, her yellow eyes never lingering in one place for too long. They scanned the bushes, the spaces between buildings, the deeper pockets of shadow that the streetlights failed to pierce. It was a vigilance that felt both primal and unnervingly precise. Was she just naturally cautious, or was there something specific she was looking for? "Rough day in stellar cartography?" Alden asked, attempting to break the intense silence. He knew she was a science student, though he had never quite pinned down her specific field. Her answers were always vague, polite deflections. "Productive," she replied, her gaze sweeping a particularly dense clump of flowering shrubs near the art department building. Her pace remained steady, but Alden noticed a fractional tightening around her eyes, a minute shift in her posture. She was observing something, processing information that he simply missed. He followed her gaze, seeing only the familiar dark leaves and the occasional flash of a security drone's indicator light high above. Nothing seemed amiss. Yet Briar's attention held. He felt a small shiver, not from the cold, but from the unsettling certainty that she perceived something he could not. His world, usually so straightforward and predictable, felt suddenly layered with unseen realities whenever she was near. They walked past the old campus clock tower, its illuminated face showing 10:07. The air grew colder as they moved away from the main thoroughfare into a quieter section of campus. Here, the lampposts were spaced further apart, creating longer stretches of dimness. It was in these stretches that Briar's vigilance became most pronounced. Her hand, without conscious thought, drifted closer to his arm, though she never actually touched him. It was an unspoken gesture, a silent acknowledgement of the heightened tension she felt. Her steps, always light, seemed to become even more deliberate, her eyes darting into every shadow, every recess. She was a hunter, or perhaps a guardian. Alden found himself watching her more than his surroundings. He observed the way her nostrils flared almost imperceptibly, as if sampling the very air for anomalies. Her ears, those distinctive gray tufts, twitched and rotated, catching subtle sounds that were lost to his human hearing. He had always dismissed her insistence as a charming quirk, perhaps a cultural difference. Now he began to wonder if her concern was far more deeply rooted, a manifestation of senses he couldn't comprehend. A sudden, sharp rustle in a nearby thicket made Alden jump slightly. It was probably just a nocturnal animal, a scavenging campus rodent. He glanced at Briar, expecting her to acknowledge it. Instead, her head snapped towards the sound, her entire body tensing like a coiled spring. Her yellow eyes narrowed, glowing with an intensified light that seemed to pierce the darkness. For a brief moment, he saw something feral, ancient in their depths. Then just as quickly, the intensity receded, though a subtle tremor ran through her. "Just a bush cat, probably," Alden said, trying to reassure her and perhaps himself. Briar did not respond directly. She merely continued her scanning, her focus unwavering. The incident, however minor, solidified a burgeoning thought in Alden's mind. Her fear, or rather her apprehension, was not a generalized anxiety. It was specific. It was intelligent. It reacted to certain stimuli, certain nuances of the night. He watched her carefully as they approached the looming, darkened silhouette of the old science annex. This building, with its disused service corridors and overgrown courtyards, was always quieter, less frequented. He remembered her mentioning it earlier. Briar's steps became noticeably more measured here. Her head was held high, her chin slightly jutted forward, a posture of readiness. Her gaze swept the upper stories, the shadowed windows, and the deep, narrow alleyways that snaked between the annex and the adjacent engineering labs. "You really don't like this part of campus, do you?" Alden ventured, his voice softer now, tinged with genuine curiosity rather than mild irritation. Briar finally looked at him, her yellow eyes holding a depth he hadn't seen before. A fleeting expression crossed her face, a hint of something vulnerable quickly masked. "It is quiet," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Too quiet sometimes." His heart gave a strange little lurch. Too quiet. What did that mean for her? What did she perceive in the silence that he did not? He found himself not just puzzled but genuinely concerned for her. Her unwavering insistence on walking him home, an act he had always seen as an overprotective, almost comical gesture, began to reframe itself. What if her presence wasn't solely about his safety? What if, in some strange, unspoken way, it was also about hers? The thought settled deep within him, a seed of unexpected warmth in the cool night. He looked at her, truly looked at her, seeing beyond the silver hair and golden eyes to the quiet, vigilant being beside him. He wasn't a helpless lamb, no, but perhaps neither was she. Perhaps they were two beings, walking through the night, each offering a silent, unexpected comfort to the other, even if he didn't yet understand the full scope of the shadows she was so carefully watching. He still wished she would explain, but a new, deeper feeling stirred within him, a desire not just for answers, but for understanding her unique world. The next evening, Alden found himself subtly checking the time more often than usual. He tried to dismiss it, telling himself he needed to focus on his counterpoint assignment, but a part of him acknowledged the quiet anticipation. He was no longer annoyed by Briar's presence. A strange comfort had settled into the routine. When he finally packed his bag and left the library, he wasn't surprised to see her, a silver silhouette under the lamplight, leaning against the same granite pillar. She offered a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Ready?" she asked, her voice soft, a hint of something he couldn't quite decipher in her golden eyes. "As I'll ever be," Alden replied, a genuine smile touching his lips. He fell into step beside her, the rhythm of their nightly walk already familiar. He decided to test her resolve. The following night, Alden exited through a less-used side door of the music building, hopping to gain a head start. He hurried along a dimly lit path, weaving through dormant hedges, feeling a mischievous satisfaction. He reached the main quad, glancing back, expecting to have successfully evaded her. A rustle of leaves behind him and then lost. Briar stood there, her silver hair shimmering, her eyes reflecting the lamplight with an amused glint. She hadn't even broken stride. Alden stopped, a genuine laugh escaping him. "How do you do that?" "I waited," she simply stated, her gaze unwavering. "You always come this way eventually." Her tone held no accusation, only a matter-of-fact certainty. His playful evasion had failed, but instead of frustration, he felt a strange, almost endearing warmth. Her persistence was unyielding. Over the next few days, Alden tried different routes, faster paces, even feigned phone calls to distract her. Each time, Briar would either be waiting at his intended exit or would calmly intercept him further along his path, her presence a constant, quiet assurance. He stopped trying to escape her, realizing the futility. Their walks became less about his resistance and more about their shared journey through the campus night. One evening, as they passed the bustling student union, Alden ventured, "I always see you waiting for me. But what about your walk home? Where do you go after you drop me off?" Briar paused, her steps faltering for a moment. Her gaze flickered away towards the darker periphery of the campus. "It is not far," she said, her voice unusually quiet. "A different direction." "But is it safe?" he pressed, remembering her apprehension near the science annex. "Are there places you don't like to walk alone?" She met his gaze then, her yellow eyes holding a depth that made him feel like she was seeing directly into his thoughts. "I manage," she replied, a hint of something unreadable in her tone. The conversation ended there, a door gently closed. Her deflection was subtle but clear. He sensed a vulnerability she wasn't ready to share. Their route, despite his now abandoned attempts at diversion, remained largely the same. It always led them past the old science annex, a building that seemed to draw shadows to itself even on moonlit nights. With each passing, Alden noticed Briar's subtle but distinct change in demeanor. Her posture would stiffen, her shoulders becoming less relaxed, more squared. Her head would tilt slightly, as if listening to something beyond the reach of human hearing. Her golden eyes, normally so calm, would sharpen, darting into the deep recesses where the disused service corridors snaked behind the building. He watched her one night as she scanned a particularly overgrown patch of ivy near a darkened window. Her jaw tightened imperceptibly. He felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cool night air. What did she see or hear in those shadows that made her so vigilant, so guarded? It was more than just caution. It was an almost primal alertness. "This place," Alden began, his voice low, "it really puts you on edge, doesn't it?" Briar turned her head slowly, her gaze still fixed on the darkness. "There is a stillness here," she murmured, her voice a low thrum, "a deep quiet that feels wrong." "Wrong how?" he asked, genuinely curious now, his earlier irritation long forgotten. He wanted to understand her perception of the world. She hesitated, then sighed, a soft, almost imperceptible sound. "Like something holds its breath," she explained, her eyes still searching the shadows. "Like the air itself is waiting." His mind reeled with the implications. For her, silence wasn't simply an absence of sound. It was a presence, a distinct sensation, perhaps even a warning. He tried to imagine hearing the world through her senses, a world alive with unseen nuances. This wasn't just about his safety anymore. It was about her unique struggle, her burden. Their conversations, once brief exchanges about campus events or his music studies, began to deepen. He found himself sharing details of his latest compositions, the challenges of a difficult chord progression, the joy of a melody finally coming together. Breyer, in turn, would offer quiet, perceptive comments, sometimes about the subtle rhythm in his speech or the underlying emotion she sensed in his descriptions. She rarely spoke of herself, but her observations revealed an acute sensitivity, a way of processing the world that was utterly alien and yet profoundly insightful. "Your music," she said one night, "it has many layers, like the forest at dusk." Alden had paused, struck by the poetic accuracy. No one has ever described it that way before. "It is what I feel," she replied simply, her eyes meeting his, a shared understanding passing between them. He started to look forward to these moments, to the quiet intimacy of their nightly walks. The mystery surrounding her, the subtle hints of a world he couldn't perceive, only deepened his fascination. He found himself increasingly drawn to her strength, her quiet dignity, and the unspoken vulnerability that occasionally flickered in her golden eyes. He realized he wasn't just tolerating her presence, he was actively seeking it. Their connection was evolving, shifting from a perplexing escort service into something far more meaningful, built on shared space, unspoken understanding, and the growing weight of a secret she still carried close. One night, as they neared the old science annex, a place Breyer always regarded with particular intensity, Alden decided he could no longer hold back. The air around them felt heavy, not with humidity, but with Breyer's silent tension. Her silver hair, usually a smooth cascade, seemed to bristle almost imperceptibly at the tips of her ears. Her golden eyes darted into the deeper recesses of the campus grounds, past the reach of the lamplight, her gaze lingering on the shadows that clung to the old building's foundation. He felt her hand brush his as she instinctively tightened her stride, pulling him subtly closer without a word. "Breyer," he began, his voice softer than he intended, "why do you always seem so uneasy around this place?" He gestured vaguely towards the annex, its darkened windows like vacant eyes. "You've been walking me home for weeks now, and every time we pass here you change. It's like you're bracing for something." She stopped, turning to face him fully for the first time in their nightly ritual. The lamplight caught the delicate curve of her jaw, highlighting a tension he hadn't fully appreciated. Her eyes, usually so direct, now seemed to search his face, weighing his words, considering her response. A long moment passed, filled only by the distant sounds of the campus settling into slumber. He waited, his chest tightening with a quiet anticipation. He knew this was a pivotal moment, a chance for their burgeoning connection to either deepen or falter. He hoped for the former. "It is not just this place," she finally said, her voice a low murmur, barely audible above the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. "It is places like this, the shadows that cling too long, the silence that feels wrong." She hesitated again, her gaze dropping to the worn paving stones beneath their feet. "I have been walking you because I felt a need to. A duty." Alden felt a pang of disappointment. A duty? Was that all this was? He had hoped for something more, something that acknowledged the growing warmth between them. "A duty," he repeated, trying to keep his tone neutral. "To protect me from what exactly? A rogue squirrel?" He offered a small, hesitant smile, hopping to lighten the mood, but her expression remained grave. She looked up, her golden eyes meeting his, no longer evasive but filled with a raw, unexpected vulnerability. "No," she stated plainly, "to protect you from what I feel, what I perceive, and from what might perceive me." She took a shallow breath. "And perhaps, yes, because I am afraid to walk these specific paths alone." The admission hung in the cool night air, transforming the familiar campus pathway into something entirely new. Alden stared at her, the playful irritation he sometimes felt about her escort melting away, replaced by a sudden rush of understanding and concern. This was not the stoic, self-assured Briar he had come to know. This was Briar, exposed, admitting a fear he couldn't have imagined. "Afraid?" he asked, his voice now gentle, almost a whisper. "What are you afraid of, Briar? What do you sense?" Her gaze flickered towards the dark, overgrown path that snaked beneath the science annex, a path he had always considered a simple shortcut, never a source of dread. "Beneath the annex," she began, her voice gaining a fragile strength, "there are service corridors. Unlit, they run deep, and there is a coldness there, a feeling. It is not cold in the way of temperature, but something else, something that chills the core." She shuddered, a subtle tremor running through her frame. "Humans, you do not feel it. Your senses are not attuned to it. But for me, it is like a scream that only I can hear, a pressure that only I can feel." He tried to process her words, to grasp the abstract concept of a coldness that wasn't physical, a scream without sound. It sounded like something out of a myth, yet her sincerity, the genuine fear etched on her face, made it undeniably real. His mind raced, connecting her earlier comments about the silence holding its breath, about the air waiting, to this new, startling revelation. It wasn't just silence she perceived. It was an active absence, a void that spoke volumes to her unique biology. "And you feel this in other places too?" he asked, his heart aching with a sudden, profound empathy for her hidden struggle. "Not just here." "In other places that are neglected," she confirmed, her gaze sweeping over the older, less maintained parts of the campus, "where the light does not reach, where things linger unseen." She met his eyes again, a silent plea for understanding in their depths. "My senses are different. They perceive things that are not visible to you, energies, resonances, and some of them are profoundly disturbing to my kind." Alden felt a surge of protectiveness he hadn't known he possessed. All this time, he had seen her as his protector, strong and unwavering. Now he saw her vulnerability, her hidden burden. She had been protecting him, yes, but perhaps more significantly, she had been using his presence as a shield for herself, a way to navigate the parts of her world that filled her with dread. His presence, his human unawareness, might have been a kind of camouflage for her, a way to move through these cold zones without drawing attention to her own acute sensitivity. The irony was sharp, yet deeply touching. "Briar," he said, stepping closer, his hand instinctively reaching out, hovering for a moment before gently taking her arm. Her skin felt warm beneath his fingers, a stark contrast to the coldness she described. "Then let me walk you home." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with surprise. "You?" "Yes, me," he affirmed, a determined resolve settling over him. "You've walked me home every night. You've kept me company even when I didn't understand why. It's my turn. Tell me where you need to go. We'll stick to the brightest paths, the most populated ones. We'll avoid any place that gives you that cold feeling." A flicker of something unreadable crossed her features. Relief, confusion, perhaps even a touch of wonder. "But you do not feel it," she murmured, as if the lack of shared perception made his offer less valid. "No, I don't," he agreed, tightening his grip on her arm just slightly, a gesture of reassurance. "But I can feel you feeling it, and that's enough. I want to help you. I want to understand." He looked directly into her eyes, conveying the depth of his sincerity. "Please, let me walk you home. Let me be there for you just as you've been there for me." She searched his face for another long moment, her breath catching almost imperceptibly. The initial shock in her eyes softened, replaced by a profound, shimmering gratitude. A faint, almost imperceptible flush rose on her cheeks. "Alden," she whispered, his name on her lips sounding like a benediction. "Thank you." The shift was palpable, a quiet revolution in their dynamic. The unspoken tension that had underscored their walks for weeks began to dissipate, replaced by a nascent trust, a shared purpose. He felt a burgeoning protectiveness, a fierce desire to shield her from the unseen threats she alone perceived. It wasn't just about walking her home. It was about acknowledging her unique struggles, validating her alien sensitivities, and standing with her against a world that was, for her, filled with hidden anxieties. As they resumed their walk, he consciously steered them away from the shadowed path near the annex, opting for the longer, brightly lit main thoroughfare. He asked her about the coldness again, pressing gently for more details, not out of skepticism, but out of a genuine desire to comprehend her world. She spoke of it as a subtle drain, a disquiet that settled deep in her bones, a feeling of being watched by something formless and malevolent. His questions were clumsy, his understanding incomplete, but she seemed to appreciate the effort, her responses growing less guarded, more open. He realized then that his initial dismissiveness, his quiet annoyance, had been born of ignorance. Briar wasn't just a mysterious girl who insisted on walking him home. She was a being of profound sensitivity, navigating a world that was both familiar and terrifyingly alien to her. And in her vulnerability, in her quiet admission of fear, she had opened a door to a deeper connection than he had ever anticipated. Their nightly ritual had transformed, shedding its perplexing facade to reveal a shared space of trust, mutual care, and the promise of a bond forged in understanding and unexpected alliance. The path ahead, illuminated by the campus lamps, no longer felt like a simple route, but a journey they would now take together, each protecting the other in ways neither had foreseen. Alden took the lead, his steps deliberate as he veered right, away from the shadowed alley that usually cut past the old science annex. Briar walked beside him, her posture noticeably more relaxed, the tension that had previously stiffened her shoulders now absent. The bright lamplight washed over them, reflecting faintly off her silver hair. "Is this better?" Alden asked, glancing at her. Briar nodded, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips. "Much. The light changes things. It cleanses the air somehow, makes the shadows less heavy." She spoke softly, her eyes still scanning but with less urgency, more observation. Alden considered her words. He imagined the campus through her perception, a place not just of academic pursuits but of unseen energies and discomforts. "So, the coldness you mentioned, it thrives in darkness." "It hides," Briar corrected. "It gathers where the light cannot reach, where the air is still and heavy with neglect. It's not just a feeling, Alden, it's a presence, a drain." She shivered despite the mild evening air. "Like a broken frequency that resonates deep in my bones, vibrating out of sync with everything else." Alden's mind, trained in the precise structures of music, latched onto her description. A frequency. Not a ghost, not just a metaphor, but something tangible, measurable perhaps, to her species. He began to form a new hypothesis. Briar's sensitivities weren't supernatural. They were heightened, an extraordinary biological adaptation. His own ears could only perceive a limited range of sound, his eyes a narrow band of light. What if her sensory input was simply far broader, encompassing phenomena humans couldn't even register? "A broken frequency," Alden repeated, more to himself than to her. "Like a discordant note, but one you feel, not hear." "Exactly," she confirmed, her eyes widening slightly in surprise at his swift comprehension. "And some places, like the annex corridors, amplify it. The old materials, the way the air flows or doesn't flow, they trap it." Their conversation flowed easily as they continued on the brightly lit main thoroughfare. Alden asked about other things she perceived. "Do other places feel different to you, like the library or the music hall?" Briar brightened. "The music hall is wonderful. It vibrates with purpose, with creation. The air sings even when it's empty. And your compositions," she paused, looking at him with an intensity that made his cheeks warm, "they have a warmth, a complex structure that feels right, harmonious." Alden had never considered his music in such terms, as something that could be felt as much as heard, a physical presence in the air. He realized she wasn't just hearing the notes. She was experiencing the very fabric of the sound, its resonance and energy. "How do you mean, feel right?" he pressed, genuinely curious. The way the vibrations interlock, she explained, gesturing vaguely with her hand. Some sounds crash against each other, creating static. Yours merge, like currents flowing together, creating a stronger, clearer path. She paused, then added, "It's why you are so good. You understand the flow, even if you don't perceive the underlying energies like I do." Her words resonated with him, not just as a compliment, but as a profound insight into his own craft. He had always composed intuitively, but Breyer's explanation gave his intuition a tangible, almost scientific basis. It made him wonder what other hidden layers of reality existed, just beyond human perception. "So your senses," Alden began, choosing his words carefully, "they're not just better versions of ours. They're different, broader." Breyer nodded, her silver hair shimmering under a street lamp. "Think of it like this, Alden. You see a spectrum of colors. I see that, but also the subtle shifts in temperature of each hue, the tiny currents of electromagnetic energy flowing through them, the way certain light sources project a different kind of pressure onto my skin." She spread her hands as if trying to encompass the vastness of her perception. "It's all information. Most of it is benign, but some of it is not." He walked, digesting her explanation. He had always seen her as an enigma, perhaps even a local legend given her appearance. Now he saw her as a testament to biological diversity, a creature whose evolution had simply taken a different, more sensitive path. Her gray-furred ears, which he'd previously thought merely striking, were likely advanced auditory or even vibrational receptors. Her golden eyes, which seemed to pierce the darkness, probably processed light in ways humans could not. The term werewolf, which had once flickered in his thoughts as a fantastical notion, now transformed into a simplified, almost poetic label for a highly evolved species. It must be exhausting, Alden mused, to constantly process so much information, to be aware of so many things. A faint shadow crossed Breyer's face. "Sometimes, especially when there's a lot of discordant energy, it's like trying to think clearly in a room full of clashing instruments, all out of tune." Her vulnerability was clear, a stark contrast to her earlier guarded demeanor. "That's why the darker places, where the coldness gathers, are so draining. They are intensely discordant." Alden felt a fresh wave of protectiveness. He realized her insistence on walking him home had been a blend of duty and self-preservation. His presence, perhaps, offered a shield, a human anchor in a world of overwhelming stimuli. Or perhaps she simply felt safer with a companion, any companion, who helped navigate the terrain. He understood now that his initial irritation had been a narrow-minded response, born of his own limited perception. He had judged her actions without understanding the complex reality she inhabited. They passed the campus fountain, its gentle gurgle a soothing sound in the night. "Do you ever wish you didn't feel so much?" he asked, keeping his voice soft. Breyer considered his question, her gaze fixed on the shimmering water. "Sometimes, but then there are moments like this. The way the water feels, the soft glow of the lamps, the quiet hum of life around us, the way your music feels. Those moments are beautiful. They make the difficult parts worth it." She looked at him again, a warmth in her eyes that mirrored the lamplight. "And having someone who tries to understand, who doesn't just dismiss it as imagination, that makes it easier too." Her words settled deep within him, confirming the unspoken bond that had been steadily strengthening between them. It was a trust forged in vulnerability, a quiet acceptance of each other's unique existence. He no longer saw her as a mysterious girl providing an unwanted escort, but as a complex individual, navigating a world with senses far beyond his own, and yet sharing a common desire for safety and connection. "I want to understand," Alden affirmed, his voice earnest. "All of it, whatever you're willing to share." Breyer's smile returned, broader this time, a genuine expression of relief and warmth. "Thank you, Alden. That means more than you know." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythmic cadence of their steps a testament to their newfound synchronicity. The air felt lighter, the campus more welcoming. Alden found himself sharing details about his latest composition, a piece inspired by the subtle shifts of twilight. Briar listened intently, offering observations about the emotional currents she perceived in his melodies, describing how certain chord progressions made the air feel like a gentle embrace, while others created a sense of hopeful anticipation. Her unique insights enriched his own understanding of his art. Their nightly ritual had now fully transformed. It was no longer about a perplexing escort, but a shared journey of discovery and mutual support. Alden was learning to see the world through Briar's eyes, or rather, through her multitude of senses. And Briar, in turn, was finding a sanctuary in Alden's quiet strength and unwavering acceptance. The path to his dorm, then to her own, was no longer just a route on Ethelgard. It was a bridge between two vastly different ways of being, strengthened by understanding and a nascent, profound affection. They were no longer just walking. They were exploring together the intricate, unseen nuances of their shared reality. One night as they strolled along the main thoroughfare, the campus lights glowed with their usual steady rhythm, painting the granite paths in soft amber. Alden was recounting a particularly challenging counterpoint exercise, Briar listening with an intensity that always flattered him. Her silver hair, usually so smooth, seemed to catch the light with an almost ethereal shimmer. Her golden eyes held his, mirroring his quiet contentment. They approached the intersection near the old administration building, a section usually well lit and bustling even at this late hour. Suddenly, without warning, the world around them flickered. Not a gradual dimming, but an abrupt, violent stutter of electricity. The streetlights overhead, the illuminated signs of nearby dormitories, even the distant glow from the library windows, all pulsed once, then died. A vast section of their route, stretching ahead and behind them, plunged into a sudden, absolute darkness. The silence that followed was heavy, swallowing the distant sounds of the campus. Alden stumbled, momentarily disoriented by the abrupt loss of light, his eyes struggling to adjust. Before he could even register the sudden change, Briar's reaction was immediate and terrifyingly visceral. A choked gasp tore from her throat, raw and animalistic. She seized his arm with a grip that momentarily crushed his bicep, her fingers digging deep into his sleeve. A low, guttural growl, unlike anything Alden had ever heard from her, rumbled from her chest. He felt a distinct shift in her, a sudden tautness in her muscles, a tremor running through her entire frame. Her silver hair seemed to stand on end, not just with static but with an internal energy. Alden glanced down, and even in the near-total dark he could discern the fine, soft fur along her forearms which he had always thought were just very fine hairs, now bristling visibly thicker and more pronounced. Her eyes, usually a warm molten gold, flared with an intense, almost blinding luminescence, cutting through the shadows like twin beacons of pure, raw fear. They were wide, unfocused, darting frantically into the oppressive dark. "Briar," Alden whispered, his voice laced with concern, trying to steady her. She was trembling uncontrollably, her breath coming in ragged, shallow gasps. Her grip on him tightened further, her claws, he realized with a jolt, were just barely piercing the fabric of his jacket. Her entire posture was one of primal terror, a creature caught in a snare. She pulled him closer, pressing her face against his shoulder, her body convulsing with silent shudders. "It's here," she rasped, her voice thin and strained, barely audible above her own shuddering breaths. The coldness, but stronger, so much stronger. Alden felt a prickle of unease crawl up his own spine, not from the darkness itself, but from the sheer, profound terror emanating from Briar. This was beyond anything he had witnessed before. Her previous apprehension near the science annex had been a quiet vigilance, a guarded discomfort. This was outright panic, a total surrender to an overwhelming dread. "What is here, Briar?" he asked, his voice low and steady, trying to project a calm he didn't entirely feel. He placed his free hand on her back, rubbing gently, trying to offer comfort amidst her distress. She lifted her head slightly, her glowing eyes still scanning the impenetrable dark, her gaze fixed on a point just beyond the perimeter of the defunct streetlights. "The resonance," she whispered, her voice a fractured echo. The shadow resonance. It's radiating. From there, she pointed a trembling finger toward a dilapidated, single-story structure set slightly apart from the main campus buildings, barely visible through the skeletal branches of a barren tree. It was an abandoned faculty office, long disused, known for its crumbling facade and boarded-up windows. Alden squinted into the gloom. He saw nothing, felt nothing but the sudden chill of the night air and the lingering sensation of the power outage. Yet Briar's terror was undeniably real. Her body was vibrating, her senses overwhelmed by something he could not perceive. He remembered her descriptions of the coldness, of the scream she felt in dark places. He had understood it as a unique sensory input, a biological response to certain energies. But this was a direct, aggressive assault on her very being. This was not just discomfort, it was a threat. He felt a surge of protective instinct, powerful and immediate. His initial understanding of her vulnerability had been intellectual, an empathetic recognition of her unique sensitivities. Now, seeing her in such profound distress, her non-human traits so starkly revealed by fear, it became deeply personal. He realized with absolute clarity that her fear of the dark was not a generalized apprehension, but a specific, terrifying reaction to an active, dangerous presence. Her nightly escorts, her unwavering vigilance, her insistence on his safety, it was all now comprehensible. She wasn't just guarding him from unseen dangers. She was using his presence, his human perception, as a shield for herself against something that preyed on her kind, something that was acutely sensitive to her. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice firm, drawing her closer into his side. He instinctively put himself slightly in front of her, a human barrier against the unknown threat she perceived. He might not see it, but he could certainly feel its impact on her, and that was enough. The concept of her protecting him now seemed almost absurd. They were in this together. Briar leaned into him, her tremors slowly subsiding as his warmth and steady presence seemed to ground her. Her glowing eyes, though still wide, focused on his face for a moment, a flicker of profound gratitude and dependence in their depths. "We have to move," she breathed, her voice gaining a fraction of its usual strength. "Away from it. It weakens me. It makes me visible to them." The implication hung in the air, heavy and chilling. Visible to whom? Alden didn't need to ask. The them was the unseen threat, the reason for her hidden life, the true purpose behind her nightly vigilance. He understood now. Her safety concerns had always been about a shared, unseen threat, one that targeted her, and by extension, put him at risk simply by being near her. Their shared reality was far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. He tightened his arm around her, guiding her gently but firmly. "Which way?" he asked, ready to follow her lead, no questions asked. He had no sight, no sense of the shadow resonance, but he had Briar, and her fear was his guide. This bond, forged in mutual vulnerability and now tested by shared peril, was becoming something immense, something unbreakable. They moved together, a silent, urgent retreat from the encroaching darkness and the unseen presence it held. Alden kept his arm around Briar, guiding her with a steady pressure as they navigated the unlit campus path. The distant campus lights were now their goal, a beacon of safety. Briar's breathing gradually calmed, but her grip on his arm remained tight, her body still coiled with residual tension. The air around them felt heavy, charged with the lingering threat. "Alden," Briar whispered, her voice strained, a raw edge of fear still present. "We need to go somewhere safe, somewhere truly private." He nodded, understanding without words. The administration building, where the power had failed, was too close. His dorm would be a temporary refuge, but not for long. He thought of his music practice room, isolated and soundproofed, but it offered no real privacy for a conversation of this magnitude. He needed a place where they could talk without interruption, where she could feel secure enough to explain. "My place isn't enough," he said, his mind racing. "We need somewhere discreet, somewhere with no foot traffic, no prying eyes." Briar finally pulled away, her glowing eyes scanning the perimeter, no longer focused on the immediate darkness but on the broader implications. Her silver hair seemed to shimmer even in the minimal light. "There's an old maintenance tunnel," she started, her voice a low murmur, "beneath the South Lecture Hall. It's rarely used, leads to a forgotten storage area. No windows." Alden hesitated. A tunnel? It sounded like the kind of place Briar usually avoided, but her logic was sound. Seclusion was paramount now. "Can you lead the way?" he asked, trusting her instincts implicitly. She nodded, turning sharply, her movements fluid and silent even in the gloom. Alden followed, adjusting his stride to hers. They moved through narrow service paths past darkened academic halls, the only sound their soft footsteps and Briar's occasional sharp intake of breath as a faint shadow seemed to ripple at the edge of his perception. He felt a chilling sensation, a phantom coldness, confirming her earlier descriptions. This was real. They reached a discreet, heavy metal door set into the foundation of the lecture hall. Briar produced a small, intricate device from a hidden pocket on her utility belt, pressing it against the lock. A faint click echoed in the silence. The door swung inward, revealing a cramped, unlit tunnel. Briar entered first, her glowing eyes providing the only illumination. Alden followed, pulling the heavy door shut behind him. The darkness inside was absolute, but it felt different, less menacing. This was a contained darkness, not the encroaching void they had fled. "This is it," Briar said, her voice softer now. She moved deeper into the tunnel, her light illuminating a small, dusty alcove with a rusted workbench and a few discarded crates. She sat on one of the crates, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Alden sat opposite her on another, his gaze unwavering. "Alden," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "what you witnessed tonight, it's only a small part of a much larger truth. I am not from Ethelgard." He waited, his heart pounding, but his face remained calm. He had suspected as much, though the confirmation still hit him with impact. Her unique senses, her physical traits, her deep-seated fear of something unseen, it all made sense now. "I am a lycanthrope," she continued, her eyes searching his for any sign of fear or revulsion. "From a planet called Zalara. My people, we are refugees here, scattered across many worlds, hiding." "Refugees?" Alden asked, the word echoing softly in the enclosed space. "From what?" Briar took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping slightly as if shedding a heavy burden. "From an oppressive regime on Zalara. They sought to control us, to weaponize our abilities. Our unique sensory and physical traits, our connection to energy frequencies, they became our curse." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "On Zalara, we could shift our forms, adapt to extreme environments, perceive energies beyond the human spectrum. But the regime saw it as a threat, an advantage they couldn't possess. They began to hunt us, to experiment. Many of my kind were lost." Alden listened intently, his internal world shifting with every word. The charming, mysterious girl who walked him home was a refugee, a survivor of an interstellar conflict. "The shadow resonance," he prompted gently, connecting the dots. "Yes," Briar confirmed, her eyes dimming slightly as she spoke of it. "It's residual energy, from their tracking technology. It's designed to disrupt our natural senses, to weaken our physical forms and to make us visible to their sensors. They can pinpoint us across vast distances if we are exposed to it, if our natural defenses are compromised." "So the power outage tonight," Alden mused, "it wasn't just an accident. It was deliberate, to create the conditions for their technology to work." "Exactly," Briar said, a tremor in her voice. "The darkness amplifies its effect, and it silences the harmonious energies I usually draw strength from. It leaves me exposed. The abandoned building, it must have housed one of their emitters, lying dormant until activated. They're here, Alden, on Ethelgard, and they're looking for me." A cold dread settled in Alden's stomach, but it was quickly overshadowed by a fierce surge of determination. His companion, the one who had quietly protected him, was in grave danger. He reached out, taking her hand. Her skin was cool, but her grip was strong. "You're not alone in this, Briar," he said, his voice firm, unwavering. I don't care where you're from or what you are. You're here now and I will help you." A flicker of surprise, then profound relief, crossed Briar's face. "Alden," she breathed, her glowing eyes softening. "You don't understand the risks. They are relentless. If they find me, they will find you too, simply for being near me." "Then we face it together," he insisted, squeezing her hand. "You've been protecting me, even when I didn't understand why. Now it's my turn. We'll figure this out. We'll find a way to stop them." Briar looked at him, a silent conversation passing between them, filled with unspoken gratitude and a deepening trust. Their technology, their emitters, they operate on frequencies that are subtle, almost imperceptible, she explained. "But there is one on this campus who might understand. Someone who deals with unusual energy signatures, who looks beyond the obvious." Alden's mind immediately went to the eccentric, brilliant mind he knew. "Professor Aris," he asked, a spark of hope igniting. "The xenobotanist. He's always rambling about strange energy fields affecting flora, unusual atmospheric compositions. Everyone thinks he's a bit mad, but he's brilliant." Briar nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "He has a reputation for seeing what others dismiss. His research focuses on the intersection of biological life and exotic energy phenomena. If anyone on Ethelgard can understand the shadow resonance without being a lycanthrope, it's him." "His lab is usually deserted late at night," Alden said, already forming a plan. "He keeps odd hours, sometimes sleeping on a cot there. It's in the old science annex, actually, but his wing is separate, well lit, and he has a security system. No coldness there, I promise." Briar's expression brightened at the mention of a well-lit space. "We should go to him. Now. While the campus is still recovering from the power surge, while their sensors might be disrupted." They rose, a renewed sense of purpose guiding their actions. The fear had not vanished, but it was now channeled into a shared objective. Alden felt an exhilarating sense of partnership. This was no longer about him being escorted home. This was a mission, a desperate bid for survival, and he was Briar's chosen ally. He opened the heavy door, peering out into the dimly lit service path. The campus was quiet, deserted. "Professor Aris's lab it is," Alden said, a confident resolve in his voice. He took Briar's hand again, not just in comfort, but in a silent pledge of alliance. They stepped out of the hidden tunnel, moving with a quiet urgency towards the distant, brightly lit windows of the xenobotanist's laboratory. Their path was set, their alliance forged in the crucible of fear and revelation. Alden and Briar moved swiftly through the quiet campus. The distant glow of Professor Aris's lab windows beckoned them, a beacon in the lingering uncertainty. Alden squeezed Briar's hand, a silent reassurance. He felt the rapid beat of her pulse, the tremor that still ran through her. They reached the old science annex, a sprawling building with several wings. Aris's lab was in the newest section, brightly lit and humming with the low thrum of scientific equipment. Alden used his student ID to access the main entrance, then navigated the familiar corridors. The air here was clean, devoid of the coldness Briar had described. Professor Aris looked up from a holographic display of a shimmering, bioluminescent plant. His spectacles were perched on the end of his nose, and his graying hair stood in wild disarray. He was a man of indeterminate age, perpetually clad in a lab coat stained with various, unidentifiable substances. His eyes, though often distracted, held a profound curiosity. "Alden, my boy," and Briar he greeted, a surprised but welcoming smile spreading across his face. "What brings you two to my humble sanctuary at this hour? Not another impromptu concert, I hope." Alden stepped forward, a serious expression on his face. "Professor, we need your help. It's urgent. It concerns strange energy signatures, the kind you often talk about." Briar stepped closer, her gaze fixed on Aris. "Professor, the power outage on campus," she began, her voice low. "It activated something, a resonance. It makes me vulnerable. It's alien, a tracking technology from my homeworld." Aris's brow furrowed. He adjusted his spectacles, his eyes scanning Briar with a new intensity. Tracking technology, you say? From another world? My dear, you always were a fascinating study, but this is quite a claim. He motioned to two empty chairs beside a cluttered workbench. Sit. Explain everything. Alden quickly recounted the events of the evening, from the power outage to Briar's terror and her revelation about being a lycanthrope refugee from Zalara. He explained the shadow resonance as Briar described it, a non-physical coldness and scream. Eris listened intently, occasionally nodding. He pushed a few buttons on his console. A series of graphs and fluctuating waveforms appeared on the holographic display. For months, he murmured, I've been detecting unusual energy spikes, localized often around neglected areas of campus. I dismissed them as atmospheric anomalies, perhaps ground radiation interference. But the patterns, they were inconsistent with natural phenomena. He tapped a specific graph. This spike, for instance. It corresponds precisely with the campus-wide power fluctuation tonight. A massive surge of a previously unclassified, exotic energy signature. He turned to Briar. You described it as a coldness and a scream. Biologically, how does your species perceive this? It disorients us, Briar explained, her voice steady now. It weakens our natural cloaking, making us visible to their sensors. It's designed to track and incapacitate lycanthropes. Eris stroked his chin. Fascinating. A specific frequency or perhaps a complex energy field designed to interact with your unique biology. This is beyond my current research, but the implications are staggering. He looked at Alden. You said they're sensors. Who exactly are they? My pursuers, Briar said. The regime on Zalara. They want lycanthropes for experimentation, for control. Eris's expression hardened. Experimentation on sentient beings. This is intolerable. He paused, his gaze distant. There is something else. A new research group arrived on campus recently, highly secretive. They secured access to several old, abandoned labs in the annex, labs I've tried to get for years. Their leader is a Dr. Kale. Stern, uncommunicative. His official brief is advanced energy diagnostics, but they've been unusually guarded about their equipment. Alden felt a chill. Dr. Kale, I've seen him. Always wearing a dark, heavy coat, even indoors. He moves with a strange urgency. His team arrived shortly after your anomalies began to intensify. Eris continued, connecting the dots. They have priority access to campus resources, bypassing standard protocols. I found it odd but didn't question it. Until now. Alden's mind raced. He knew the campus like the back of his hand. He had explored every nook and cranny, from the steam tunnels to the highest bell tower. I've seen their vehicles, unmarked but with a specific insignia. I also noticed unusual power conduits being run into the old faculty offices near the administration building, where the outage happened. Power conduits, Eris mused. That's highly irregular. What would they need such specialized conduits for in an abandoned office? To power something discrete, Briar interjected, her eyes narrowing. Emitters. Small, concealed devices that project the shadow resonance in localized areas. They would activate them during disruptions, hopping to flush me out. Alden nodded. That would explain why the campus lights flickered right when it happened. They might have overloaded the grid to create their disruption. Eris stood, packing his lab with renewed vigor. This is not just an academic curiosity. This is a clear and present danger. If they are deploying such technology on campus, it's a violation of interspecies agreements and fundamental ethical principles. We need to find these emitters, Alden said, a plan forming. Briar can sense them even if subtly. I know the campus, the places where they could be hidden. And you, Professor, you have the equipment to verify her perceptions. Briar looked at Alden, a flicker of admiration in her golden eyes. His quick thinking, his ability to synthesize information, was a powerful asset. Over the next few hours, working in the pre-dawn quiet, their alliance began to solidify. Eris produced a portable energy scanner, a device he usually used to detect subtle bioenergetic fields in exotic flora. He calibrated it to Breyer's description of the resonance, creating a sensitive filter. It won't detect the coldness directly, Aris explained, handing the device to Alden, but it will register any significant localized exotic energy output. It's rudimentary, but it's our best shot. Alden took the scanner. It was a sleek handheld device with a small holographic display. He felt a surge of purpose. Breyer's hand found his, a silent affirmation of their shared mission. They started in the science annex itself, where Breyer had felt the initial intense surge. Guided by Breyer's subtle shivers and the direction of her gaze, Alden scanned the walls and ventilation shafts. The scanner remained silent. "It's not here," Breyer whispered. "They wouldn't place it so close to their own base. They need to draw me out." Alden recalled his observation about the power conduits near the old faculty offices. "Let's go to the administration building. That's where I saw the unusual installations." They moved cautiously, Aris following with a larger, more sophisticated array of sensors, his demeanor shifting from eccentric academic to focused investigator. The campus was still mostly dark, but a few early morning risers were beginning to stir. They kept to the shadows, using the cover of pre-dawn twilight. As they approached the administration building, Breyer stiffened. There she breathed, pointing towards a cluster of thick ivy growing on the building's exterior. A faint hum, a residual coldness. Alden activated the handheld scanner. The device whirred softly, and a faint, unstable waveform flickered on its display. "Professor," Alden exclaimed, his voice hushed. "It's picking something up." Aris quickly brought up his more powerful sensors. "Confirmed," he said, his voice grim. "A low-level exotic energy signature, consistent with the patterns I observed during the outage, but highly localized and directed." Carefully, Alden parted the ivy. Concealed within the dense foliage, cleverly camouflaged, was a small, metallic device. It was about the size of his fist, with a single, dark lens. It emitted no sound, no light, but Alden could feel a subtle tingle in the air around it. "An emitter," Breyer whispered, her hand tightening on Alden's arm. "This one is dormant, but it holds the resonance, like a scent marker." Aris examined the device with a pair of specialized goggles. Remarkable, advanced energy projection. It's designed to be almost undetectable to human senses, a brilliant piece of engineering for a truly heinous purpose. He carefully bagged the device for further study. "This confirms your story, Breyer, beyond a doubt." The discovery of the first emitter invigorated their resolve. They spent the next few hours meticulously searching the campus, guided by Breyer's increasingly refined senses and Alden's intimate knowledge of hidden spots. They found 3 more emitters, all cleverly disguised. One in a decorative planter near the central quad, another tucked into a discarded maintenance panel near the main lecture hall, and a fourth embedded in a lamppost near the dormitories. With each discovery, the gravity of the situation deepened. Cale's group wasn't just searching. They were actively laying traps, weaponizing the campus itself. Aris contacted a select few. Chief Alara Vance, head of campus security, was a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for integrity. Lieutenant Jax, her most trusted officer, was a former military scout with sharp instincts. Aris presented his findings, showing them the captured emitter and explaining Breyer's situation, omitting only her full lycanthrope form for now, focusing on the illegal deployment of alien technology. Chief Vance listened, her face unreadable. "You're saying a rogue research group is using our campus as a hunting ground for a refugee?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Precisely," Aris affirmed. "And these devices could have unforeseen consequences for human health if activated indiscriminately. They are a threat to everyone on Ethelgard." Lieutenant Jax, examining the emitter, nodded slowly. "This isn't standard tech, and Cale's group has been far too cagey. I've had my suspicions." The meeting concluded with a decisive plan. Chief Vance, horrified by the implications, agreed to a full investigation, but discreetly. They couldn't tip off Cale's group prematurely. Alden and Breyer would continue to act as their primary intelligence gatherers, with Aris providing technical support. Vance and Jax would mobilize a small, trusted team to monitor Cale's movements and prepare for a coordinated response. As dawn broke, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold, Alden and Breyer walked away from the security office, leaving Aris to coordinate with Vance. Breyer leaned her head against Alden's shoulder, a profound weariness in her posture, but also a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "We have allies now," Breyer whispered, her voice laced with relief. "Real allies." Alden wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "We're not alone in this, Breyer. Not anymore." He looked up at the rising sun, a new day dawning on Ethelgard and a new chapter for them both. The alliance was forged, their purpose clear. The fight had truly begun. The morning light offered little comfort. Cale's team moved with an almost predatory efficiency, their presence a new, palpable chill on Ethelgard. New emitters, smaller and harder to detect, had appeared overnight. Breyer's senses screamed warnings from every shadowed corner of Solara University. "They are actively searching now," Breyer whispered, her hand tightening on Alden's arm as they navigated a less-traveled path behind the student union. Her eyes, usually molten gold, held a sharper, more urgent gleam. "I feel their net tightening." Alden scanned their surroundings. He saw no one, yet Breyer's unease was infectious. He trusted her perception implicitly now. "Aris is working on a counter-frequency for the emitters," Alden replied, keeping his voice low. "Vance and Jax are trying to pinpoint Cale's main base." "Time is what we lack," Breyer said, her gaze fixed on a distant, overgrown hedge line. "These new devices are more powerful. They weaken me even in partial light." They had spent the night in a secure faculty apartment Aris had arranged, but movement was necessary for intelligence. Every new emitter they could locate gave Aris more data. Their current mission was to confirm a suspected new emitter placement near the old gymnasium. As they rounded the gymnasium's far side, a sudden, sharp spike of coldness hit Breyer. She gasped, stumbling back against Alden. Her silver hair bristled and her ears flattened against her head. "Close," she choked out, pointing a trembling finger toward a utility access panel on the gym wall. "Very close." Before Alden could react, a voice cut through the morning air. "There they are." Three figures emerged from behind a row of sanitation bins, Cale's security personnel, identifiable by their dark, unmarked uniforms. They moved with alarming speed, fanning out to cut off their escape. One carried a device that glowed faintly, aimed directly at Breyer. "Run," Alden yelled, pushing Breyer forward. He instinctively placed himself between her and the approaching figures. Breyer, despite her weakening state, moved with incredible agility, weaving through the narrow space between the gym and a storage shed. "They're faster than I anticipated," Alden thought, his heart pounding. The campus security team, Alden knew, was still gathering intel. They were on their own. "We can't outrun them here," Breyer said, her voice strained, looking back. "The emitter is affecting my speed." Alden saw their path ahead was clear, but the pursuers were gaining. He glanced around desperately. His eyes landed on a mounted public address speaker, part of the campus-wide emergency system, positioned high on the gym wall near the utility panel. A small control box, usually locked, was ajar. "The PA system," Alden exclaimed, "this way." He grabbed Breyer's hand, pulling her towards the gym wall. The pursuers were only meters away now. He could hear their heavy boots pounding the asphalt. "What are you doing?" Breyer asked, her eyes wide with alarm. "Distraction," Alden replied, reaching for the control box. His fingers flew over the simple interface, his musical training kicking in. He saw a manual override switch, usually reserved for facilities staff. He flicked it. A low, distorted feedback whine erupted from the speaker. The pursuers hesitated, momentarily startled by the sudden noise. Alden didn't stop there. He knew the basic frequencies of campus emergency alarms. He quickly adjusted the settings, overriding the standard system. His fingers danced across the controls, twisting knobs, pushing buttons. He didn't aim for a siren. Instead, he unleashed a cacophony of disorienting sound, a jarring, dissonant chord followed by a blast of white noise, then a series of piercing, high-frequency pulses that grated on the ears. It was a weaponized composition, designed to overwhelm and confuse. The effect was instantaneous and dramatic. The Kale operatives clutched their heads, stumbling. The glowing device one held sputtered, its beam wavering. One operative cried out, dropping to a knee. Briar, too, flinched, but the sound, while unpleasant, didn't seem to affect her as profoundly as the shadow resonance. "Go, Briar, now," Alden urged, still manipulating the sound, keeping their pursuers disoriented. Briar didn't hesitate. She moved, not just with speed, but with an almost blurring swiftness Alden had never seen before. She was a silver streak, a whisper of motion, covering the distance to the corner of the building in an instant. Alden pulled his hand from the controls, letting the chaotic sound continue to blare, then spun and followed her. He felt a surge of adrenaline, exhilaration mixed with terror. He had bought them precious seconds. They burst around the corner into a less exposed area. Briar immediately pulled him into the deep shadows of an alcove beneath an exterior stairwell. The sound from the PA system, though muffled, still echoed. Briar pressed herself against Alden, her body trembling, but her eyes were fixed on him, filled with an intensity that took his breath away. "You," she started, her voice raspy, "you did that." Alden, still catching his breath, nodded. "Had to improvise. Music can be loud." He felt a flush of pride, seeing the raw admiration in her gaze. "Not just loud," Briar whispered, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "You disrupted their focus. Their technology relies on precise frequency. Your sounds were chaos." She paused, her grip tightening. "No one has ever done something like that for me." Alden's heart swelled. He looked into her eyes, seeing past the golden irises to the depth of her being. A being he was beginning to understand was far more complex and capable than he could have imagined. "We're in this together, Briar. Always." Briar leaned in, her forehead resting against his. "I trust you, Alden, more than anyone." A faint silver glow emanated from her hands, and she pressed them lightly against his chest. "My senses are failing, but I can still feel the path. There is a service tunnel entrance nearby, behind the old library. We can lose them there." As she spoke, Alden noticed a subtle change in her form. Her eyes glowed brighter, and the faint silver sheen on her hands seemed to ripple, almost like energy. Her movements were more fluid, more powerful, even in her weakened state. It was a glimpse into her true defensive capabilities, a controlled manifestation of her lycanthrope strength. "Show me," Alden said, his voice soft, filled with a new kind of wonder. He felt a profound connection, a bond forged in shared danger and mutual respect. The fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by the warmth spreading through him. Briar pulled away, her movements regaining some of their former swiftness. "Follow me, but be silent." She moved with a newfound confidence, her vulnerability giving way to a fierce resolve. She didn't just sense the path. She seemed to anticipate every shadow, every shift in air currents. Her enhanced abilities were not just for avoiding detection, but for navigating with an almost preternatural grace. She was a creature of the night, even in the encroaching dawn. They moved like ghosts, Briar leading, Alden close behind, their steps light, their breathing shallow. The chaotic sound from the PA system began to fade in the distance, but the memory of their close call and Alden's quick thinking pulsed between them. Briar glanced back at him, a faint smile touching her lips. "Your music saves lives, Alden." "And your senses guide them," he replied, squeezing her hand. The romance between them was no longer a nascent spark, but a flame burning bright amidst the cold threat of Kale's pursuit. Their purpose was clear, their bond unbreakable. They were partners, equals, navigating an alien threat on a familiar world, their hearts entwined in the unexpected dance of survival and love. The service tunnel entrance was a dark maw behind the old library, easily missed by casual observers. Briar pushed aside a heavy, rusted access panel, the metal groaning in protest. Inside, the air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and forgotten machinery. Alden followed her into the gloom, his hand still clasped in hers, the warmth between them a stark contrast to the chilled air. Professor Aris, Chief Vance, and Lieutenant Jax were already waiting inside, their faces illuminated by Vance's tactical flashlight. Aris looked weary but determined, his gaze immediately going to Briar. Vance, ever the professional, nodded a silent greeting, while Jax, a young woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, gave Alden a look of grudging respect. "You made it," Aris said, his voice low. "Kale's forces are scattered but still active. They're searching the gymnasium area." Briar stepped fully into the tunnel, her posture straightening. The silver sheen on her hands had intensified and her eyes held a steady, golden glow. She looked more powerful than before, her senses slowly returning. "Their emitters weaken me, but they also guide me to their locations. I can feel them like discordant notes." "We have a plan," Vance stated, activating a small holoprojector that displayed a detailed campus map. Red dots pulsed across the old science annex, Briar's initial point of fear. Kale's primary hub of activity, and where he's concentrated most of his emitters, is the annex. He thinks it's the perfect isolated hunting ground. He doesn't realize it's where Briar's senses are strongest, Alden added, a spark of understanding in his eyes. The dark corridors, the neglected spaces. They're no longer a weakness but a tactical advantage for her. Aris nodded. "Exactly. My initial readings of the coldness she described were dismissed as anomalies. Now I understand. Those are areas where the natural energies of Ethelgard are suppressed, making them ideal for lycanthrope detection, but also allowing Briar's true senses to cut through the interference more sharply once she adapts. Our goal," Vance continued, "is to expose Kale. We need proof of his illegal activities. Disabling his emitter network will not only protect Briar but also disrupt his operation, forcing him into the open." Jax pointed to a section of the map near the annex's main entrance. "We've confirmed Kale himself is overseeing operations there. He has a small security detachment, but they're spread thin across the building." "Alden and I will create a diversion," Aris proposed. "We'll set off a series of focused sonic pulses, combined with a harmless electromagnetic burst. It should draw Kale's security away from the deeper levels of the annex, creating a window for Briar." Alden felt a surge of excitement. "My music could be more than just a distraction this time. If we can generate specific frequencies, we might even scramble Kale's comms, isolating his team." "Excellent idea, Alden," Aris praised. "I have a portable frequency modulator. We can interface it with your data pad. It will amplify your composition's disruptive capabilities." Briar looked at Alden, her golden eyes reflecting the tactical light. "I will move through the service tunnels beneath the annex. They connect directly to the emitter locations. I can disable them quickly, but I need you both to draw their primary attention." "Chief Vance and I will secure the perimeter," Jax added. "No one gets in or out without us knowing. We'll be ready to move in once Kale is exposed." The plan solidified, each member of the unexpected alliance taking their designated role. Alden felt a profound sense of purpose. This wasn't just about Briar's safety. It was about justice, about fighting back against an unseen oppression. He looked at Briar and she met his gaze, a silent promise passing between them. They moved with practiced stealth through the network of maintenance tunnels, the faint sounds of campus life above them muffled. Aris checked his equipment. Alden uploaded new sonic sequences to his data pad, and Briar moved with a predator's grace, her senses already mapping the unseen world around them. As they neared their objective, the coldness Briar had described became palpable to Alden, a subtle drop in temperature, a prickling sensation on his skin. It was more pronounced here, a stark reminder of the threat. "We're directly beneath the main control room," Briar whispered, pointing to a great overhead. "Kale is there. I can feel his presence and the strongest emitter signal." Alden nodded. He took a deep breath, preparing himself. "All right, Aris, let's make some noise." Aris activated his device, a low hum filling the tunnel. Alden then tapped his data pad, unleashing a cacophony of carefully crafted, disorienting frequencies. The sound vibrated through the floor above, a deliberate assault on Kale's sensors and comms. Simultaneously, Aris's electromagnetic pulse flared, briefly scrambling nearby electronic systems. Above them, shouts erupted, footsteps pounded, the diversion worked. "Go, Briar," Alden urged. Briar didn't hesitate. With a silent leap, she vanished into a darker recess of the tunnel, her form a blur of silver and shadow. She moved through the annex's forgotten spaces, a spectral hunter in her true element. Her lycanthrope senses, amplified by the very coldness Kale exploited, allowed her to navigate the intricate, lightless corridors with absolute precision. She located each emitter, a small, humming device affixed to the grimy walls, and with a swift, powerful motion disabled them. Sparks flew, the devices going dark, the coldness in the air subtly receding with each one. Alden and Aris continued their sonic assault, moving further into the tunnels, drawing more attention away from Briar's path. They heard the frantic voices of Kale's security detail, their attempts to communicate failing, their movements becoming disorganized. Briar, meanwhile, reached the final emitter, directly outside Kale's control room. She felt a surge of energy, her senses sharper than ever, her body light and swift. The last device pulsed with a malevolent hum. She tore it from the wall, crushing it in her bare hand. The door to the control room burst open. Dr. Kale stood there, flanked by two of his guards, his face a mask of fury. "What in the blazes is going on?" He snarled, then his eyes landed on Briar. His anger morphed into a chilling smile. "The lycanthrope. Excellent. You've led yourself right to me." He held up a sleek, metallic device, unlike the smaller emitters. This one hummed with a deep, resonant vibration, its central crystal glowing with an ominous violet light. "This is a lycanthrope containment field generator. It will neutralize you instantly, permanently. You'll be a captive, a specimen, and my employers will be very pleased." Before Kale could activate it, Alden and Aris emerged from the tunnel entrance behind him, alerted by the sudden silence from Kale's room. Alden saw the device, recognized the immediate threat. He didn't hesitate. Aris, distract the guards. Alden yelled, then sprinted forward, not towards Kale, but towards a stack of old, empty equipment crates near the room's entrance. Aris, understanding, let out a piercing high-frequency burst from his modulator, sending Kale's guards reeling. Kale, focused solely on Briar, ignored Alden until it was too late. Alden launched himself at the stack of crates, kicking the bottom one with all his might. The entire pile toppled with a deafening crash, blocking the doorway and momentarily trapping Kale's dazed guards. Kale snapped his head towards Alden, but Briar was already moving. With speed that blurred, she closed the distance, her hand flashing out. She didn't strike him. Instead, she twisted the containment device from his grasp with surgical precision. The violet light flickered and died as it clattered to the floor. "No," Kale roared, lunging for it. But Alden was there first, his foot stomping down on the device, crushing it under his heel. He looked at Kale, his eyes blazing with a fierce protectiveness. "It's over." Kale stared at the ruined device, then at Alden, and finally at Briar, who stood poised, her golden eyes fixed on him. His face contorted, all pretense of scientific detachment gone. "You fool. You have no idea what you've done. The Xyloran Directorate will not tolerate this interference." The words hung in the air, a chilling confirmation of Kale's true allegiance. The Xylaran Directorate, the oppressive regime Briar had fled, was here on Ethelgard. At that moment, Chief Vance and Lieutenant Jax burst through a side entrance, weapons raised, their faces grim. They had heard Kale's outburst. "Dr. Kale," Vance said, his voice cold and authoritative, "you are under arrest for illegal alien tracking, unauthorized energy manipulation, and espionage. The Xyloran Directorate has no jurisdiction on Ethelgard." Kale, defeated, slumped against the wall, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. Briar looked at Alden, a profound gratitude shining in her eyes. His quick thinking, his courage, his unwavering support. He had not only saved her, but he had helped expose the very threat that haunted her. The dark corridors no longer held fear for her. Instead, they had become the stage for their victory, a testament to their unexpected alliance and the burgeoning, undeniable love that burned between them. The final threads of Kale's conspiracy were unraveling. Chief Vance secured Kale with standard restraints, his movements precise and efficient. Lieutenant Jax moved to apprehend Kale's two dazed guards, their faces still slack from Alden's sonic diversion. Professor Aris stepped forward, his expression a mix of grim satisfaction and professional concern. "The evidence is conclusive, Kale," Aris stated, addressing the defeated scientist. "Your energy signatures, the unauthorized equipment, the Xylaran Directorate affiliation. This isn't just a campus breach. This is interstellar espionage." Kale remained silent, his gaze fixed on the crushed containment device, then on Briar. Her golden eyes held a steady, unwavering power. The fear that had once clouded her seemed to dissipate with each passing second of Kale's defeat. "We'll need statements from everyone," Vance said, looking at Alden and Briar. "But first, we need to secure this entire annex. Professor Aris, your expertise will be invaluable in locating and neutralizing any remaining emitters or dangerous energy sources." Aris nodded. "My team is already mobilizing. We'll sweep the entire campus, ensure every last trace of this shadow resonance is eradicated." He looked at Briar. "No more cold spots, my dear, no more fear of the dark." Briar felt a profound release, a weight lifting from her very being. The constant subtle tension, the underlying hum of danger she had lived with, finally began to recede. She looked at Alden, a silent message of gratitude and something deeper passing between them. Over the next few days, the aftermath unfolded with methodical precision. Alden, Briar, and Professor Aris provided detailed accounts to a special task force assembled by the Ethelgard Planetary Council. Chief Vance and Lieutenant Jax presented their comprehensive report, detailing Kale's illicit activities and the Xyloran Directorate's attempts to exploit Ethelgard's neutrality. Briar's refugee status was not only confirmed but celebrated. The Council, moved by her story and the clear evidence of interstellar persecution, officially recognized her as an asylum seeker. More importantly, they established new protocols for identifying and protecting other lycanthrope refugees who might seek safety on Ethelgard. A designated department, spearheaded by Professor Aris's research, was created to monitor for similar incursions and to provide a safe haven for those fleeing oppression. "This isn't just about you, Briar," an official from the council told her during a formal hearing. "Your courage has illuminated a threat we were unaware of, and in doing so, you've helped us open our doors to an entire species in need. Ethelgard will be a beacon of hope." Briar felt a surge of emotion. She was no longer just a hunted refugee. She was an emissary, a bridge between worlds. Alden sat beside her throughout the proceedings, his hand a constant, comforting presence on her arm. His silent strength was a grounding force, reminding her that she was not alone. Professor Aris's team worked tirelessly, sweeping Solara University campus. They located and systematically dismantled every remaining emitter, ensuring the shadow resonance technology was completely neutralized. Breyer walked with Alden one afternoon, weeks after Cale's arrest, through the very corridors of the old science annex that had once filled her with such dread. She felt nothing but the ordinary chill of the old building, the familiar scent of dust and aged metal. The coldness, the scream she once perceived, was utterly gone. The dark places were just dark now, mundane and harmless. "It's truly gone," she whispered to Alden, her voice filled with wonder. "No residual energy, no lingering fear." Alden smiled, squeezing her hand. "Just an old building now, nothing more." Their steps echoed softly through the silent halls, a stark contrast to the panicked flight and desperate search they had endured there. They emerged into the late afternoon sunlight, blinking against the brightness. The campus felt different, lighter, purged of the unseen threat that had lingered beneath its surface. That evening, Alden and Breyer walked home together, hand in hand, their pace unhurried. The lamplit paths of Solara University stretched before them, familiar and safe. There was no urgency in Breyer's steps, no darting glances into shadows. Her silver hair caught the soft glow, and her golden eyes, once alight with vigilance, now shone with quiet contentment. "Do you still need me to walk you home?" Alden teased gently, his thumb tracing patterns on her knuckles. Breyer leaned her head against his shoulder, a soft laugh escaping her. "Perhaps, but not out of necessity, only because I want to." She tightened her grip on his hand. "Thank you, Alden, for everything." He looked down at her, his heart swelling. "There's nothing to thank me for. I wouldn't have had it any other way." He remembered his initial annoyance, his dismissal of her quiet insistence. How naive he had been. He had found not just a cause, but a connection that transcended anything he had ever imagined. Breyer gazed at the familiar campus buildings, no longer seeing them as a hiding place, but as a home. Ethogard, a planet so different from her own, had embraced her, and Alden, a human, had seen beyond her differences, beyond her species, to the person she was. Their shared journey, born from fear and danger, had forged an unbreakable bond. "What will you do now?" Alden asked, his voice soft. "With the directorate exposed and Ethogard offering sanctuary." Breyer considered, then smiled, a genuine, radiant expression that lit up her face. "I will live. I will learn. Perhaps I will even contribute to Professor Aris's work, helping others like me." She looked up at Alden, her eyes full of warmth. "And I will stay if you'll have me." Alden stopped, turning to face her fully. He gently cupped her cheek, his gaze tender. "Breyer, there's nowhere else I'd rather have you. We've faced down alien spies and interstellar threats. A quiet life together on Ethogard sounds like the perfect next adventure." He leaned in, and their lips met under the soft glow of a campus lamp. It was a kiss that sealed their unique romance, a testament to unexpected alliances, the enduring strength of shared purpose, and the profound emotional depth found when two beings from different worlds found their true home in each other. The future stretched before them, peaceful and bright, filled with the warmth of a love that had defied all odds.